They said money builds empires, but they never told you it also builds betrayal. A billionaire at the top of the world, celebrating his greatest victory, never imagined that the man he trusted the most, the friend he called brother, was plotting his downfall. In one stormy night, he was hurled like a piece of trash into the Black River, left to die, his empire stolen in cold blood. But fate had other plans, because the hands that pulled him from death's grip were not those of the rich, not those of his allies, but of a poor maid whom the world never noticed. What follows is a tale of survival, revenge, and the unbreakable will of a man who rose from the river not as a victim, but as a storm ready to destroy everyone who betrayed him. This is not just a story of wealth and betrayal. It's a war between power and truth, greed and loyalty, life and death. And once you start watching, you will not stop until the very last second. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon. The Hudson River glistened under the stormy night sky, its waters restless, as if they already knew the secret they were about to keep. High above the river, the Glass Tower Hotel pulsed with music, laughter, and the clinking of crystal glasses. Inside, New York's elite gathered in celebration of one man, Richard Harlow, a billionaire whose empire stretched across oil, steel, and real estate. His name commanded respect, envy, and fear. The ballroom was a cathedral of wealth chandeliers, dripping light like diamonds, waiters in black vests weaving between guests with silver trays. The air was heavy with perfume, and Pride. Richard stood at the center, tall and distinguished, his silver-streaked hair slicked back, his black tuxedo tailored to perfection. On the surface, he was everything the magazines proclaimed, America's golden billionaire. But behind his calm smile, shadows hid in his heart. Richard, boomed a voice, snapping him back. Thomas Kane, his childhood friend turned chief financial officer, wrapped an arm around him. Thomas was broad-shouldered, with a polished charm that disarmed anyone in seconds. Tonight, his grin was wide, but his eyes carried something darker. Another deal closed, another empire conquered. "You've done it again, brother," Thomas said. "The Senate contract, it's history in the making. You'll be remembered forever." Richard gave a tired smile. "History doesn't remember men, Thomas. It remembers what they build. Tonight, it's just another stone in the foundation." "Always the humble one, eh?" Thomas chuckled, but his grip on Richard's shoulder was just a little too tight. "That's why you need me, to remind you what kind of king you are." Richard didn't notice the edge in his tone. At the far corner of the room, almost invisible among the gowns and suits, a woman moved quietly between tables, collecting empty glasses. Angela Brooks, dressed in a plain black maid's uniform, kept her head down. To these people, she was nothing more than furniture unseen, unheard, unimportant. She had worked here for 3 years, long enough to memorize the scent of caviar and champagne, but never once tasting either. Every dollar she made went to keeping her sick mother in a small rented apartment across the river. She had dreams, once college, music, a life beyond servitude. But dreams had a cruel way of dying when bills piled up. Yet tonight, fate was about to thrust her into a story no one would believe. Asterisk, as the evening wound down, Richard slipped away from the noise and stepped onto the rain-slicked balcony. The storm had worsened, lightning flickering across the sky, thunder rumbling like an angry god. He leaned against the railing, staring out at the city he had helped shape. Towers of glass and steel gleamed below, like jewels scattered across the night. "Richard," a voice came behind him. It was Thomas, his tone strangely soft. "You're always escaping the spotlight." "I needed some air," Richard said. "It gets suffocating in there." Thomas stepped closer, too close. "You know, I've been thinking. All these years I've been at your side. Every deal, every empire. And yet, it's always you at the top. You in the headlines. Do you ever wonder what it feels like to be in my shoes? Richard turned, brows furrowed. Thomas, where is this coming from? You've been compensated more than anyone. You're not just my CFO. You're my friend. My brother. Thomas's lips twisted into a smirk. Friendship doesn't erase envy. Or debts. Or the hunger to have it all. Richard's eyes widened. What are you saying? I'm saying tonight, Richard, you lose your crown. Before he could react, two masked men burst from the shadows of the balcony. They moved fast, like wolves. Richard swung, landing a desperate punch, but the rain made every surface slippery. The men grabbed him by the arms, forcing him against a railing. Thomas! Richard gasped, his voice cracking with betrayal. Don't do this. Thomas leaned close, his whisper venomous. You built your empire on trust, Richard. That was your mistake, and now, your empire is mine. No. Richard struggled, rain mixing with sweat. You'll regret this. I swear to God, but Thomas only smiled. Goodbye, brother. With one brutal motion, the masked men heaved him over the edge. Richard's scream vanished into the thunder as he plummeted 50 stories down into the black water below. The impact was a knife of ice. The Hudson swallowed him whole, dragging him under. His lungs screamed for air, his suit clung like chains, and the darkness pressed from all sides. Is this how it ends? His mind flashed images, his mother's face, his late father's words, the empire he built brick by brick. All of it slipping away. Up above, the party continued, oblivious. Down below, death waited. But fate had one more move. Angela Brooks walked home from her shift, her cheap umbrella battered by the storm. She cursed under her breath as water seeped into her worn shoes. She hated walking by the river at night, but it was the fastest way back to her apartment. As she trudged past the docks, something caught her eye, a disturbance in the water. Something thrashing desperately. Her heart jolted. No. At first, she thought it was a drunk, maybe a homeless man slipping in. But then she heard it, a muffled gasp, a fight for life. Without hesitation, she dropped her umbrella and bag, sprinting to the edge. Hold on, she shouted, though the storm drowned her voice. She dove in. The cold was a shock that tore the breath from her lungs. As she pushed forward, arms slicing the waves, she saw him, dark suit, sinking fast. She grabbed his arm, kicking with all her strength. Don't you dare die on me. She gasped through chattering teeth. Richard's consciousness flickered. He barely registered the face of the woman pulling him, only the fierce determination in her eyes. With every ounce of strength, Angela dragged him toward the shore. Her muscles screamed, her lungs burned, but she refused to let go. Finally, they broke the surface, coughing and gasping, collapsing onto the muddy bank. Richard rolled to his side, vomiting river water, chest heaving. His eyes met her, soaked hair clinging to her face, lips trembling, yet alive. You saved me, he whispered hoarsely. Angela blinked, hardly believing it herself. I thought you were gone. For a moment, the storm raged around them, the city oblivious, the world unchanged. But for these two souls, one billionaire, one forgotten maid, everything had changed forever. And somewhere high above, in the glittering tower, Thomas Kane raised a glass to the crowd. Smiling as though nothing had happened, he believed Richard Harlow was dead, but the river had given him back his life. And with it, the fire for vengeance. The storm faded by dawn, leaving New York draped in a gray haze. The streets were slick with rain. Neon signs flickered against puddles, and the city carried on, unaware that one of its titans had nearly drowned in the Hudson hours before, in a crumbling brick building across the river. The kind of place billionaires never stepped foot into. Angela Brooks struggled to push open her apartment door. Her soaked body trembled from exhaustion, but she refused to give in, supporting the weight of the unconscious man she dragged from death. She stumbled inside. Her apartment was small, 2 rooms. Cracked paint peeling from the walls, the faint smell of mildew clinging to everything. An old fan buzzed weakly from the ceiling. A folded blanket doubled as a sofa cover, and a small table held photographs of her mother from better days. She laid the man on her thin mattress, coughing, his skin pale and lips blue from the cold river. She didn't know who he was, only that he wore a suit finer than anyone in her neighborhood could afford. "Please don't die on me now," she whispered, fumbling for a towel. She wrapped him, rubbing his arms, desperate to keep him warm. "Not after I dragged you out of that damn river." Slowly, his chest rose and fell more evenly. Relief swept through her. Hours passed before his eyes fluttered open. Richard Harlow blinked against the dim light. His throat burned, his muscles ached, and his mind struggled to piece together what had happened. The last thing he remembered was the balcony. Thomas's smile. The plunge into black water. Asterisk. Now he was staring at a cracked ceiling, lying on a bed that felt like it might collapse under his weight. And sitting at the edge was a woman in a black maid's uniform, her damp hair tied back, exhaustion etched into her features. "Where am I?" Richard croaked, startled, then exhaled in relief. "You're awake. Thank God. I thought you weren't going to make it." Richard pushed himself up, grimacing. "Who are you? What is this place?" "Angela," she said simply. "I work at the Glass Tower Hotel. I saw you in the river last night. I couldn't just walk away." Richard's eyes studied her, suspicion flickering. "You saved me?" Angela gave a dry laugh. "No need to sound so surprised. Believe it or not, some of us still care about human life." Richard looked around at the shabby apartment. A billionaire, brought low into a world of peeling walls and second-hand furniture. It was a universe away from the penthouses he was used to. He swallowed hard. "They tried to kill me." Angela frowned. "Who?" His fists clenched. "Thomas Kane, my friend." His voice cracked with the bitterness of betrayal. "He threw me over that balcony. I should be dead right now." Angela's eyes widened. "Wait, Thomas Kane? The CFO? The guy who was all over the news last week?" Richard's gaze sharpened. "You know me." Angela hesitated, then nodded. "Of course I know you. Everyone knows you. Richard Harlow, billionaire tycoon. Your face is on every business magazine at the hotel. But what I don't know is why would your best friend want you dead?" Richard looked away, shame flooding him. "Because I trusted him. And in my world, trust is the most dangerous weakness of all." The day stretched on. Angela left briefly to check on her sick mother in the next room, an elderly woman whose frail cough echoed through the thin walls. Richard listened quietly, guilt gnawing at him. He had spent his life amassing billions, while people like Angela worked themselves to exhaustion just to survive. When she returned, carrying a tray with soup she could barely afford, Richard muttered, "Why help me? You don't know me. I could be dangerous. I could bring trouble to your doorstep." Angela set the tray down firmly. "Maybe, but I couldn't let you drown. Not when I had the chance to do something." She sat across from him, arms crossed. "Besides, people like me, we know what it feels like to be invisible. To scream and have no one listen. Last night, you were invisible too. I couldn't ignore that." Richard stared at her, struck by her words. He had lived in a world where money commanded attention, where power silenced everyone else. But this woman, this maid, had risked everything to save him without even knowing who he was. Angela, he said slowly, you've done more for me in one night than most people in my life ever have. She shrugged, brushing off the compliment. Don't get sentimental. If your friend really wants you dead, then saving you might have just painted a target on my back too. Meanwhile, across the city, Thomas Kane sat in Richard's office, sipping expensive whiskey as he signed documents. The news channels ran headlines. Billionaire Richard Harlow missing after storm. Authorities suspect accident. Thomas smiled bitterly. Accident indeed. His assistant entered. Mr. Kane, the board is concerned. With Mr. Harlow missing, Thomas cut him off. Richard is gone. The empire needs leadership. That leadership is me. Draft the announcement. Effective immediately. The assistant hesitated. And if Richard returns? Thomas's eyes hardened. He won't. But deep down, a shadow of unease flickered. Back in the apartment, Richard paced restlessly. His strength was returning, but so was his fury. I can't stay hidden, he muttered. Thomas will destroy everything I built. He'll bleed the company dry. I need to stop him. Angela raised an eyebrow. And how exactly do you plan to do that? Walk into your office dripping river water and say, surprise, I'm back? You think he'll just hand it over? Richard's jaw tightened. I'll find proof. Evidence of his betrayal. He thinks I'm dead. That gives me the advantage. Angela crossed her arms. You're a billionaire, Richard. You've probably never ridden the subway or eaten from a street cart. You don't know how to disappear in plain sight. But me? That's my whole life. If you want to move without being noticed, you'll need my help. Richard stopped, meeting her gaze. For the first time, he realized this woman wasn't just his savior. She might be the only ally he had left. Then help me, he said quietly. Help me take back my life. Angela studied him, weighing the risk. If she helped, she'd be stepping into a war she had no stake in. But as she looked at his haunted eyes, something inside her hardened. Fine, she said finally. But if we're doing this, we do it my way. No billionaire tantrums. No throwing money around. You'll have to live like the rest of us. Can you handle that? Richard smirked faintly. After last night? I think I can handle anything. Angela sighed. We'll see. That night, Richard lay awake on her worn mattress, staring at the ceiling. His body ached, his mind burned with anger. But one thought echoed louder than the storm that had nearly killed him. Thomas Kane thinks I'm dead. He stole my empire. He betrayed my trust. His fists clenched. But I will rise again. And when I do, he'll wish the river had finished the job. Beside him, Angela watched silently from the doorway, her expression unreadable. She didn't know if she was protecting a man seeking justice, or helping unleash a vengeance that could consume them both. The following nights turned into a strange partnership. For the first time in his life, Richard Harlow moved unseen through New York. No limousines, no private jets, no bodyguards. Just second-hand clothes borrowed from Angela's neighbor, and the gritty anonymity of crowded streets. Angela became his guide. She showed him the subway, how to blend in, how to buy street food without looking like a tourist. To Richard, it was humiliating at first. But slowly, he began to see a world he had ignored his entire life. The weary eyes of workers on night shifts, the children playing in broken alleys, the strength it took to survive without millions cushioning every fall. And through it all, his rage toward Thomas burned hotter. Every newspaper headline twisted the knife deeper. Thomas Kane appointed interim CEO of Harlow Enterprises. Richard Harlow presumed dead. Body yet to be recovered. Kane promises new era for company. Thomas was consolidating power at lightning speed. One evening, Richard paced Angela's tiny apartment, fists clenched. He's dismantling everything. Selling off assets, cutting jobs, pocketing millions. If I don't stop him now, there won't be a company left to save. Angela leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You can't just walk in there and accuse him. He'll bury you before you open your mouth. I need proof, Richard growled. Angela raised an eyebrow. Then let's get it. Richard blinked. You'd help me with this? Angela smirked. What else am I going to do? Fold laundry while your so-called friend steals the world? Besides, she hesitated. I've spent years watching people like me get crushed by men like him. Maybe this is my chance to fight back. Their plan was dangerous. Angela used her job, the Glass Tower Hotel, as cover. She slipped into restricted floors, gathering whispers from drunken executives, stealing glimpses of confidential documents left carelessly on tables. Richard, meanwhile, hacked into old contacts, discreetly former employees, allies who owed him favors. Piece by piece, they uncovered Thomas's scheme. Offshore accounts, forged contracts, bribes to senators. But the deeper they dug, the darker it became. One night, Angela burst into the apartment, her face pale. Richard, it's not just you. He's planning to sell off the factories. Thousands of workers will lose their jobs, families, children, all so he can pocket billions. Richard's jaw tightened. He's not just stealing my empire. He's destroying lives. This isn't just revenge anymore. It's justice. Angela met his eyes, and for the first time, she saw not the billionaire she had saved, but a man fighting for something beyond himself. The danger closed in. One night, as Angela left work, a black SUV followed her. She ducked into an alley, heart pounding, but the vehicle crept slowly, watching. She rushed home, locking the door behind her. They know, she whispered to Richard. They know someone's snooping. Richard put a hand on her shoulder. Then we're running out of time. The climax came on the night of Harlow Enterprises' annual shareholders' gala. The world's cameras were fixed on Thomas Kane, who stood at the podium in a gleaming tuxedo, delivering a speech about a new future. Investors applauded, blind to the rot beneath his words. Backstage, Angela slipped through service corridors, her maid's uniform granting her invisibility. In her pocket, a flash drive loaded with evidence Richard had pieced together proof of Thomas's crimes. In the shadows, Richard waited. His heart pounded as he looked at the stage where his betrayer basked in applause. Angela met him at the side door, whispering, "This is it. Once the files go public, he's finished." Richard nodded, but his eyes burned with something more than justice. He wanted Thomas to see him, to know he hadn't drowned, that his betrayal had failed. The moment came as Thomas raised his glass in a toast. "To Richard Harlow," he declared smugly. "A man we lost too soon, whose legacy I will. Whose legacy you tried to steal." The voice cut through the hall like thunder. Gasps rippled across the room as Richard Harlow stepped into the light, alive, breathing, eyes blazing with fury. Thomas's face drained of color. "No, this isn't possible." Richard strode forward, every camera flashing. "Did you think the river could silence me, Thomas? Did you think betrayal would go unpunished?" The crowd erupted in whispers, reporters shouting questions. Angela moved swiftly, plugging the flash drive into the projector system. Screens behind Thomas flickered to life, displaying documents, bank transfers, offshore accounts, all damning evidence of his corruption. The room froze. Thomas staggered, his mask slipping. "This is lies. Fabrications." Richard's voice thundered. "This is the truth. You betrayed me. You betrayed every worker who trusted this company." And tonight your empire crumbles. Security surged forward, but the shareholders themselves demanded Thomas's arrest. Police, already tipped off by Richard's allies, stormed in. Thomas was handcuffed, screaming, "This isn't over, Richard. You'll pay for this." Richard stood tall, his chest heaving, as the cameras captured the fall of his traitor. Days later, the world hailed Richard Harlow's miraculous return. But he didn't return to his penthouse. He returned to Angela's small apartment, sitting at her kitchen table with a cup of cheap coffee. "You changed my life," he told her quietly. "Not just by saving me from the river. You showed me the world I ignored, the people I failed." Angela blinked, overwhelmed. "Richard, I just did what anyone should have done." "No," Richard said firmly. "You did what no one else would, and I'll never forget it." He handed her an envelope. Inside were documents transferring ownership of several properties, homes, schools, and medical centers. "For you, for your mother, for your community. No one here will ever be invisible again." Tears filled Angela's eyes. "Richard, I don't know what to say." "Say nothing," he whispered. "Just promise me you'll keep fighting for the ones who can't." But as Richard looked out the window at the city skyline, his reflection haunted him. Thomas's words echoed, "This isn't over." And deep down, Richard knew the river had spared him once. But enemies like Thomas never truly drowned. The war for his empire was only beginning. If you liked my story, please like the video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with as many people as possible. Thanks for watching.